Welcome back. We're going to look at Matthew 24 and verse 4 onwards now. Again, we do need to verify that our question is about the sign of your parousia and at the end of the age, because in fact, of course, these signs must these signs must come first before the parousia can be there. And as we said before, that's underlined by the fact that Jesus stressed the end is not yet, the fulfillment is not yet. Now, the first sign that he warns about is people coming in my name saying, I am the Christ. False Christs seem to be a feature of the end times. False prophets, he repeatedly warned about this. This is something that we really need to be alert to. That means that they're rife, they're common. The chances are that, indeed, the majority of people that you see wherever will actually fit this bill. There'll always be efforts to deceive, especially in the end times. And the question is this: will it be that you'll have people who claim that they are Christ? They will come and say, "I am Christ," or "I am Jesus," or "I am the Messiah." The thing is, actually, that would be quite easy to spot. Because, if somebody comes along and says, "I'm Jesus," I'm going to say, "No, you're not, mate, because I didn't see no lightning." I didn't see any big events. I haven't seen these signs fulfilled, so therefore you're not Jesus. I think that the more deceptive problem is people who affirm that Jesus is the Christ. So we would assume that they are Christian teachers. They will say Jesus is Lord, Jesus is Christ, but then they will set out to deceive. Okay, so they will come along, they will teach the Bible, they'll speak the right lingo, all the Christianese and all that kind of stuff, but then they will lead you astray. And it's like Acts 16 verse 17, you've got the slave girl who said, "These are servants of the Most High, they're telling you the way to be saved," and you think, "Oh, Christian, I've got somebody who's supporting me," and actually, of course, it was demonic, and Paul made sure that it was dealt with. Then Jesus moves on to some more overt signs. He says there'll be wars, and he also says that there'll be famines, and then pestilences, and earthquakes. And when we look at those, it's interesting because wars, famines, and pestilences are something that feature in the Old Testament very much as examples of the wrath of God. You've got sword, famine, and plague. They're the usual elements of God's wrath. Natural disasters as well, but mainly sword, famine, and plague. And so therefore we see a particular group of things here which really echoes something from the Old Testament. It's very much the wrath of God. But understand this: the wrath of God is only for unbelievers. He sends his wrath against the ungodly. Christians, believers, are free from the wrath of God. Sometimes people look at these things and they sort of think that there's going to be random destruction everywhere. It's not random. God is in control. He knows exactly who, where, when, and why. And it's interesting, actually. I was just thinking about Jeremiah. I think it's about chapter 36, where Baruch is told, that when Jerusalem is destroyed or the city is attacked, that God will keep him, and he will keep his life, and he will bring him through, and he will live. And there's just this promise that, there's this reassurance that God is in control of each individual case, and he will dictate exactly what happens. It's not just random machine gun fire that will get the innocent and the guilty, the old and the young, and the fat and the thin all together. It's that God's wrath is very specific. And we see that in a few scriptures, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's just stick with what we've got here. It's interesting here that Jesus actually describes this as the beginnings of sorrows. So if you're looking for a label for this particular stage, then you can say this is the beginnings of sorrow. This is where there are elements of God's wrath. There is evidence that God is stirring things up. Okay, and this is called the beginnings of sorrows. It's likened to, the same expression or similar expressions are used in other scriptures, like somebody who's expecting a child. And the whole idea is that actually something new is going to come along. And so you have to go through these stages in order to see the future. All right. So let's summarize. Okay, so let's just cut out the notes that we made and just keep the main events. We've got the parousia, we've got false Christs, we've got wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. Okay, so we can start to build up a timeline, a simple list of the things that happen. And I think it's important to do this because, and I recommend that you do this yourself, start with a blank sheet of paper, just go through Matthew's Gospel, mark out and note down the main events. We've got the second coming of Jesus will be at the end of these signs, okay? And we've got, these are the signs, we've got false Christs, wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. Okay, so there's our list. It's starting to build the list of signs. Right. So then we can move on to the next section, which is on a slightly different topic for the next study.